Imagine a pharaoh so dominant, so strategically brilliant, that he waged 17 military campaigns across the ancient Near East and never lost a single one. This is the story of Thutmose III, ancient Egypt's most brutal warlord, and by nearly every measure, the greatest pharaoh who ever ruled. Forget Ramesses II and his colossal monuments. Thutmose III actually built Egypt's wealth, its empire, and its reputation as the most feared military power in the ancient world. He was more than just a ruler on a throne. He was a military genius on the battlefield, personally leading his armies into the chaos of ancient warfare. Egyptologists call him the Napoleon of Egypt. But here's what they don't always mention. Unlike Napoleon, Thutmose never lost. Not once, not ever. Thutmose III's accomplishments aren't historical secrets, but the story of how he achieved them is part of forgotten military history that deserves more recognition. Indeed, his rise was anything but guaranteed. Born around 1481 BC to Pharaoh Thutmose II and a lesser wife named Iset, he was never the obvious heir. When his father died, the boy was far too young to rule, and his stepmother, Hatshepsut, a towering political force in her own right, seized the regency and eventually declared herself pharaoh. For over 2 decades, Thutmose was sidelined, but Hatshepsut made one fateful decision that would change the ancient world forever. She appointed him commander of Egypt's armies. That choice transformed a prince into the deadliest general the ancient Near East had ever seen. He absorbed everything: logistics, troop movement, rapid assault strategy, the psychology of enemy commanders. By the time Hatshepsut died, in 1458 BC, Thutmose III was a weapon waiting to be unleashed, and the ancient world gave him every reason to strike. The moment Hatshepsut's death became known, the kings of Canaan and the Levant revolted, sensing weakness at Egypt's center. It was a catastrophic miscalculation on their part. Thutmose, the newly crowned 6th pharaoh of Egypt's 18th dynasty, had zero interest in diplomacy. He mobilized his forces with extraordinary speed, crossing the Sinai, marching to Gaza, and driving north with a precision that stunned his enemies. His target was the city of Megiddo, known by its Greek name Armageddon, a fortress city in what is now modern Israel, where a coalition of over 300 Canaanite kings had gathered to make their stand. His generals urged the safe route, but Thutmose chose the narrow, treacherous mountain pass, a bold gamble that shattered the enemy's entire strategic formation before the battle even began. The Battle of Megiddo is the first military engagement in recorded history to be documented in a reliable and detailed way, preserved in the annals of Thutmose III, inscribed on the walls of the Temple of Amun at Karnak. When the Egyptian army burst through the pass and deployed on the plain, the Allied coalition panicked and fled straight for the city walls. The Egyptians, young and hungry for spoils, stopped to plunder the abandoned enemy camp rather than taking the city outright. Thutmose was furious, declaring that the capture of Megiddo was worth the capture of 1,000 cities. He was right. So he did what any ruthless ancient military genius would do. He built a siege wall around the entire city and starved it into submission over 7 agonizing months. The haul was staggering: hundreds of captives, thousands of horses and cattle, hundreds of chariots, and military hardware on a scale that announced Egypt's dominance to the entire ancient Near East. The victory at Megiddo was only the beginning. Over the next 2 decades, Thutmose conducted campaign after campaign with a relentlessness that defined ancient Egypt's military history. He struck at the wealthy trading city of Kadesh. He pushed into Phoenician ports, securing the Mediterranean coastline and becoming the first pharaoh in history to fully exploit sea power to support military campaigns on land, a strategic innovation centuries ahead of its time. He crushed resistance in Nubia, pushing Egypt's southern border further than any previous pharaoh had dared. He crossed the Euphrates River to confront the Mitanni, a feat so significant that he commemorated it with a stone stele placed beside the one his grandfather, Thutmose I, had erected decades earlier. Every campaign expanded the empire. Every campaign brought tribute flowing back to Egypt. The Assyrian, Babylonian, and Hittite kings, the great powers of the ancient world, sent gifts to his court. What made him truly exceptional wasn't just the brutality of his conquest or even his undefeated record in ancient warfare. It was his strategic thinking. Thutmose understood that military victory alone doesn't hold an empire together. Rather than massacring the sons of conquered rulers, he had them brought to Egypt, educated at court, immersed in Egyptian culture, and then sent home to govern as loyal client kings. It was soft power wielded with a general's precision. The Canaan conquest brought all of northern Canaan under Egyptian control, creating a buffer of allied kingdoms that protected Egypt for generations. His campaigns in Syria-Palestine established what some historians call a Pax Egyptica, a century of relative peace enforced by Egyptian dominance across the ancient Near East. Yet even this greatest of ancient military commanders faced real obstacles. The siege of Megiddo was nearly compromised by his own soldiers' greed. The kingdom of Mitanni resisted repeated campaigns before finally yielding. And perhaps his most complex challenge was political, not military, the lingering legacy of Hatshepsut. Late in his reign, not immediately, as was long assumed, but around his 42nd year of rule, Thutmose ordered the systematic removal of Hatshepsut's name and image from monuments across Egypt. For years, scholars accused him of petty vengeance. The reality was almost certainly more calculated. By eliminating evidence of a female pharaoh's reign, he secured a clean and uncontested succession for his son and heir, Amenhotep II. It was a ruthless political maneuver dressed up as historical erasure, and it worked. Thutmose III died in 1425 BC after more than 53 years on the throne, having conquered roughly 350 cities and extended Egyptian control from the Euphrates River to the Fourth Cataract of the Nile. His legacy reshaped ancient Egypt in ways that echoed for centuries. The wealth he poured into Egypt funded an explosion of art, architecture, and culture. The Lateran obelisk at Karnak, the largest Egyptian obelisk ever built, still stands today in Rome, a monument to a pharaoh the ancient world never forgot. Why Rome? Because Roman Emperor Constantine I had it moved to Alexandria in the 4th century AD, then Constantius II had it shipped to the Eternal City, a fitting destination for a pharaoh who achieved immortality due to his military accomplishments. Thutmose's successors in the 18th, 19th, and 20th dynasties used his reign as the template for what a great pharaoh should be. Even in the Valley of the Kings, where he became only the 3rd pharaoh ever buried, his tomb contains a complete Amduat, the sacred text mapping the sun god Ra's journey through the underworld, promising that the greatest warrior Egypt ever produced would achieve immortality alongside a god. In the end, the comparison to Napoleon isn't wrong, it just doesn't go far enough. Napoleon built an empire and lost it. Thutmose III built Egypt's greatest empire, never lost a battle, and held every inch of it. He was a brutal warlord, yes, but he was also an administrator, a strategist, an innovator, and, by any serious measure, the most consequential military commander the ancient world ever produced.